And we are live. Welcome to Playmaker TV episode 6. Time flies. I thought about this morning that it's 1 month till Christmas. Jesper, have you managed to buy all your Christmas presents yet?
No, zero Christmas presents actually. I'm usually a person that is buying the Christmas presents like in advance because that's just how I do things. Like if I have things to do, I learned from my mom when I was a kid. It's better to do your homework that is due Friday on Monday because then you can relax the rest of the week. And that's like so. I still do that with stuff. So if I have to prepare something, I do it early, and then I'm prepared in case of that something unexpected happens. So.
Okay.
I will probably buy my Christmas present soon, but I have no idea what to buy.
I just thought about the fact that it's Black Friday tomorrow, the worst day of the year. But
Yeah.
let's not jump into that discussion. We are here to talk data and football, and as we discussed, you and me privately, we just thought about the fact that we should go into diving deeper into player data.
Yes.
So today we are actually going to talk about Fridolina Rolfö. Obviously, we want to promote Swedish players as well, because we are Swedish, you and me, and we have great players in Sweden. And Fridolina is playing in FC Barcelona, and they are going to play at Camp Nou tonight at Bayern Munich in the Champions League. So we thought this would be the perfect warm-up ahead of this game, right?
Exactly. Perfect warm-up ahead of a great game. So I'm excited for that one. And both teams are probably gonna advance, or like we can almost take that for granted already. But it's very important to win the group as well to get an easier draw. So important game.
And obviously FC Barcelona has Fridolina, so they're gonna win, right? I mean,
yeah, of course. Or we have
we have a Swede in Bayern Munich as well, in Hanna Glas, but unfortunately she is injured at the moment. We love them both, by the way, so this is not teams against each other, but we are going to talk about Fridolina Rolfö this live stream. You are going to use data from Playmaker and show some graphics from her performance at the Euros this summer. That was very discussed in media in Sweden, and obviously outside of Sweden as well. We are going to look at data from the Champions League last season and from Liga F this season.
Exactly. I took Champions League from last season because it's finished playing, and if I take all those 3 tournaments, it's about equal amount of games. Not really, but about equal amount. So that's what I decided to do, because we're gonna scout, or we're gonna go through a scout report of Fridolina today, as you said. And one thing that I find, like, except from just scouting a Swedish player and taking a look at our Swedish star that we both like and enjoy watching to play, it's also a nice thing to, like, because when you scout a player, like when we scout a player, or if I scout a player to recommend to any of the clubs that we work with and so on, it's nice to scout the player in different environments, like if the team, or if the player has played both national team and club football, or like over 2 years, just to see like how it has shifted, and also like if the team has played different formation, different coaches, or been in the second league and then being newcomers in the top 5, like how has that affected the player. And that's one thing that we're going to take a look at here with Fridolina. She hasn't been promoted, but she's played in 3 different tournaments here, and Barcelona and Sweden has been maybe playing differently, or been different good, or whatever. Or Barcelona
I think it's fair to say that the Swedish national team and FC Barcelona are different teams, both in style and what players they have in their starting lineup and in their squads overall. But I do think that it's very interesting to see the data like on the same picture from every tournament, and between these two teams, obviously, as well. And Fridolina, she won the diamond ball, as we call it in Sweden, the last time. And obviously, I think that that many people had expectations on her going into the Euros. Obviously, also because Sweden's ranking at the FIFA ranking is pretty good, I would say.
Yeah, pretty good.
Pretty good. I'm trying to be humble here.
Yeah.
But let's dive in. And I will just say that there are some slides that will be kind of hard to follow on the screens, that I will put them on Twitter while Jesper speak.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start. At first, we will take a look at Fridolina Rolfö's the classic spider, or the spider that we have on the platform that I've showed before, with 6 characteristics stats. These stats are like, she's evaluated in these different categories based on a machine learning model that we have in Playmaker to evaluate actions both through event data and tracking data. So here is Fridolina Rolfö in the UEFA Championship in England last year, here up to the left. And then up to the right, we have Liga F this year. And then we have Champions League last season in the bottom here. And then we have the different categories here. So we have heading, which is how successful she is in the air, both in defense and offense. And then we have finishing, like how much expected goals that you're generating, or how many chances that you are taking, but also like how you are evaluating them. How good of a finisher are you? Are you scoring more goals than expected from on your chances? Then we have creativity, which is a measure of like how good you are when it comes to carries, dribbling, and how much of a difference that makes for your team. Mostly in offense, but it could also be like when you have to be creative in defense in order to escape pressure and so on.
I think it's we have to make the viewers understand now that the red color is Fridolina, and the black color, that's the average for every from the Euros, from Liga F, and from the Champions League last season.
Yeah, very good, very good. I missed to put that in here, the label. Exactly, that's the case. So yeah, and duels, that's how big of a difference you make for the team when it comes to winning challenges, or duels as we call it. And it can be different kind of duels, slide tackles, ground duel, dribbling challenges, and so on. And then this defensive skills is like, it's a measure of how good you are to stop the team's possession in different kind of ways, from pressuring or like defending low, but regarding to your position. And if we go through the spiders, we can see that Euros, it was only Sweden played 5 games, so not so much, but all players that played more than 250 minutes are in the spider. And like, she did a very good job among other wingers. Like, she was over average in all of them, and was one of the best wingers in the Euros that we will see later. When it comes to Liga F, she has done well in finishing so far, and creativity as well, and defensive skills. And then one thing that is important to know is that she's closer to the middle when it comes to heading here in Liga F. It doesn't necessarily mean that she's bad in the air. It can also mean, like, the spider also tells you like how she's used, or like how her style of playing. So that's important to remember. And one thing, and we will see that later when we dig into the data closer, like how she's used, why she maybe is low on just headers. And when it comes to the Champions League, you can see that she had a very important role defensively as a winger as well. Like she was very good in winning challenges. It could be offensive challenges as well. Like, very good in pressure, very good in challenging when she owns the ball as well, to keep other players away. and the creativity is the one thing that is high, as high always. She's a very good technical player.
Yeah, and also one thing I would like you to speak about now, Jesper, because it says left winger on every spider, and we know that Fridolina has been playing in a back four as a left back for Barcelona, but playmakers, you have a detective. Tell us about that. How you?
Oh yeah, we have we have a position detector as well. We don't like we don't manually fill in the information about the positions on all players only. So we have a detector that detects based on the actions and so on. And then here I think it's just we also have like we can look out for how much the players has played in different positions, like what the spread is. And here I think that when I made this spider, it just printed like the best match and so on. And one thing that I think that makes her a winger as well, which we will see in later in the data as well, is that she is very offensive compared to other fullbacks and what actions she's contributing with. I wouldn't say the detector is so bad because that's what she's playing in Sweden and other positions. So she's a very good match to someone playing a winger.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, it's also a good thing to say that the more red the spiders are showing, the better. We like red at Playmaker, obviously. But
yeah,
you can look at the logotype up there in the corner.
Yeah, exactly. So it would just be a small gray edge on this spider if she was the best in all the categories. Here in passing ability and the Euros, she was almost the best. There was only a few players that were better than her. Okay, so we can take a closer look at this KPI spider that describes wingers. And I think if you just take a look at the shape, like the first glance, you could see that they look a bit different from national team compared to Barcelona, don't they?
Yeah, they are like obviously very different. And like from what I said in the beginning, I mean, when you compare them close to each other like this, you may get, I mean, other thoughts in your head when you watch her play for the Swedish national team and Barcelona. And we will tweet this picture out later on as well, because I know it's hard to see what it says on here. But we will share it later, we promise.
We will. So yeah, if we take a look at it, we can see that the Champions League last year and Liga F this year, they are looking more similar. They're not like exactly the same, but you can see that they are more similar to each other. One measure that she's very high on is or is performing very well at is expected threat received. And I don't know how much we talked about it before, but I can explain it to new viewers. And also it's always nice to hear something again for repetition. But expected threat receiving, that's actually like if you mirror expected threat passing and you look at which players that are receiving high expected threat values, and that's can tell you if a player is very important target in the offense. And if you have a high expected threat received, it could be two different things. Either you are, or it could be many different things. But like if I make it more simple, it could be two different kind of players, especially. Like it could be the target player that is working a lot in the box and like receiving a lot of balls there. But it can also be a player that runs route and breaks line and receive line breaking passes. And that's more of the case with Fridolina, that she's running in between lines and receiving longer passes more in Barcelona compared to in Sweden, when she's you can see here with expected threat passes, she's more creating chances, so to say, than receiving or like being creative with her running routes and so on, as she is in Barcelona. So that's one difference you can see.
And Barcelona has just released their starting XI for tonight's game, and she is in that XI. So
Nice.
Yeah, very nice. Just gonna put that in here.
Yeah. And one thing also that is interesting is here, you see that we have tackles here and interceptions, for example. And when it comes to Sweden, we can see that she's has a higher tackles per 90 value, although it's pretty high in Barcelona as well, above average. And even if it doesn't say so here, the tackles value and the interceptions, they are adjusted for possession. So it shouldn't, like, they're adjusted so that it evaluates, like, when the team is not owning the ball, how good are you in or how often are you successful in your tackles or successful in your interceptions. One interesting thing is that she's doing more interceptions in Barcelona than she is in Sweden, and that could be from like how Barcelona pressures when they are losing the ball compared to Sweden and what role she has there. And yeah, she's successful in crosses in both Sweden and Barcelona, and you can also see that she has more touches in the box in Barcelona compared to Sweden. That can also be from how offensive Barcelona is. Even though Sweden is a very good and offensive team, we have to say that Barcelona is the step above Sweden.
You dare to say that, yes? But
yeah, I dare to say that.
Yeah, you dare to say that. I love these, shortenings because touches in the box on this spider is TIB per 90. Then,
yeah, exactly. And you see there non-penalty NP is non-penalty goals, and the difference between finishing and non-penalty goals is really that you can see, for example, in the Swedish national tournament, you can see that her non-penalty goals per 90 were not that high. I think she scored 1 goal in the Euros, right?
No, 2. Didn't she score 2? I think.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. 2. But they were not that high compared to other wingers, or like not that high, but they were less than average. But you can see from finishing that they were above. So she was like slightly performing. Like when it comes to finishing and evaluating her chances, she was better compared to other wingers in that, compared to how many actual goals she scored. So it's nice to have them next to each other. You can kind of see how they look and tell something from that. And when we talk about finishing is not maybe the biggest difference here, but then we have all the seasons here when it comes to finishes, and you can see here in the Euros that she had a couple of finishes. Mostly she had like outside the box. She had several shots. She had some here inside, and she scored 1 goal on 0.8 expected goals, so like slightly above. And when it comes to Liga F that we have here, she scored against Real Madrid. Like, it feels like last week. I was gonna say last weekend, but it's not last weekend. It's like 4 weeks ago, or what is it?
You were, by the way, you were right, because she did score once, but she had 1 assist. In the Euros as well. I just checked it up.
Yeah, and then when it comes to Champions League last year, she slightly underperformed her expected goals, actually, although she scored 3 goals. You can see that she could have scored slightly more. But if you look at the shots here, they're more centered. Like we saw that she had a higher touches in the box value, and it also looks like she's allowed to move more into the center of the penalty area. Like, this is just shots, so it's I maybe interpret a little bit more than you can see these pictures, but I've looked at other graphs as well. But like, you can see that she is performing more finishes from the center, while in the national team she's more coming from the left. We can also look at the dual action map, and this action map is it's not supposed to be simple to maybe look in this graph like exactly at the differences at the shapes, but you can compare the green and the red colors. You could see on the spider that she was pretty good in interceptions, and although like 58.3 sounds maybe low for an interception percentage, and 72.0, that's very high numbers when it comes to interception. And what is interception percentage? That could also be a question. Like, isn't this interception absolute? But the way we measure in at Playmaker, it could be different in other statistic platforms. But is that an interception is successful if you manage to recover the possession. So a lot of interception, sometimes when you put in pressure and you break a pass or something, it could be that you just touch the ball in a different direction, and then the team takes over possession again, or you win the ball, but you're in a very pressured area and you lose it again, or you perform like an interception pass in the same action and you lose, and it comes to an opponent, and then you haven't like successfully taken over the possession. So that's how we measure. But you can see here then in the Champions League that 72% of the times when she did an interception, Barcelona took over possession, and that's a very good and high number. Yeah, and we can also see that in the Euros and in Champions League last year, she was allowed to move in the offense more like centrally in the final third. As for this year in Liga F, she's more of a winger. You can see that like the actions, at least here when it comes to the defense, is very wide. Or they are maybe as wide in all of these, but in the offense, they are not as centered, if we put it like that. If you look at the passes, it's a bit of the same story. These are all the passes that she made, so it's a bit messy, but you can almost view it as a heat map, where she has a lot of actions. Like, she doesn't have as many actions like on the defensive half, or like the defensive part of the central third and the first third, as she has in Barcelona. Barcelona's, it could be described from like playing as a fullback or offensive fullback, and also like from Barcelona's like possession football compared to Sweden, the level of possession they have. But you can see that she has most of her actions here in the offensive half. And if you look at the wider ones here in offensive half, like in the offensive part of the central third, if I circle here, they are maybe used more in build-up. And then when it comes to the offensive play or in counter-attacks, she's allowed to like move into the center of the penalty area. And if we take a look at the carries, it's less carries, but it's a little bit of the same story. What do you say, Mia?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, the passes where you can see the carries as well, and like you said, these can be like interpreted as heat maps in these actions also.
Yeah, definitely.
And I do think it's, when you look at the pass maps, it's pretty clear that Barcelona also pass many short passes before they attack. if I
exactly.
something
like
to describe that.
It's maybe hard to visualize here, but you can see that she has plenty more of the shorter passes. As when it comes to Sweden here, especially, you can see that she has some much longer passes from wider here out here to the left into the center of the pitch to Filippa Angelal or Natalie Björn or Caroline Seger or whoever played there. But you can see that she has more of those.
Yeah.
But she's used like a bit in the same way when it comes to passes into the box out from the wide here in both teams. And you can also see here in the carries that we had a lot of passes coming from the left here out of the penalty area into the box. And you can see a lot of the carries here leading up to those passes that they are like she's running into the inner corridor of the final third or the outer corridor of the final third, and then the pass come. Okay, and then progressive actions. So progressive actions, I've merged together the passes and the carries here. And a progressive action is an action that is going towards the opponent goal. So it's if the pass is going sideways or if the distance to the goal, to put it easily, is not changed or increased, then it's not a progressive action. So the distance to the goal has to decrease to be a progressive action.
Yeah.
And if we take a look here, you can see that she's doing a lot of both. Like the expected threat here on these actions are above 0 on all of them, since they're progressive. And you can see that when it comes to Liga F and Swedish national team, it's a bit 50-50 or like 60-40 passes. But actually in Champions League, it's kind of interesting to see that she's having more of these carries, and some of them actually come from like when she's receiving the ball high and then she can run in empty space. And from here, she had these passes into the central area or the goal zone, as we saw in passes. And if we take a look at the crosses, you can see that they're also coming here from the inner or outer, mostly outer corridor, or outer corridor in all these cases, from similar positions, which is not that weird or strange. You can see, I don't know if it's a coincidence in this case, I haven't watched the video or crosses, but like the crosses percentage, if we take a look at the number per se, is the highest in the Swedish national team, and then it's almost the same in Liga F, but it's a bit lower in Champions League last year. And why is that? You have to take maybe a closer look at all the crosses per se and like how the defense is oriented, because that affects the percentage a lot. Like if you're passing to a player that is free and available, or if you're putting a cross into a packed penalty area, for example. So yeah, that could be one. Yeah, it could be many answers to this, but that's one case. But that's a great idea. Well, like when you can get an idea from data, but you need to look maybe closer into video, or if you have a good tracking system, we can get some information out of that. But video is very much in hand.
Yeah, if we were allowed to, we would for sure be showing some clips as well, but we don't want to mess with the copyrights and stuff like that. So when you have looked at this episode of Fridolina's data, perhaps in tonight's game, you will be able to see something from the data when she plays.
Yeah, and exactly, to think of these things and see if what we've been talking about is correct in tonight's game, or if you can see similarities.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna switch this. Okay. So here's her key passes. They're not that many. She also had 1 assist in the European Championship, as you mentioned. And like, there are not that many key passes in the Euros, but it was 5 games. And I mean, 5 key passes and 1 assist in 5 games. That's really good numbers. It's a few games, but it's really good. If you compare it to Champions League, where she maybe played, I don't know if she played all of the Champions League games, but at least almost, and that's more than twice the games. And then you can see that she has quite many so far. Has she played 8 games in Liga F? Barcelona has played 9. Has she played 8 or?
Yeah, I think it's been 9 rounds, and she's been playing in 8 of those.
Yeah,
I'm
I thought
sure.
Yeah, I thought I saw
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
9 key passes in 8 games, also like slightly above 1. So
Yeah,
great.
that's not bad, I would say.
No, that's not bad at all. And you can see here that she's like coming in from her full back or winger position and passing the ball into the golden zone here, as when she in the national team, they're more of like the shorter key passes she had, or like when she's moving more centrally
Yeah.
into the penalty area. Okay, so let's take a look at positive expected threat receiving. We talked about expected threat receiving in the Spider because she had a very high expected threat receiving per 90. And so when we take a look here at how she's receiving the passes, you can see the blue circle is the actual reception position, and the yellow arrow is like where from the pass came from her teammate. And these actions shown here are all only the progressive actions or the progressive passes that she's received. If I would have taken all the passes, it would be completely more messy. So here is only like the progressive receptions that she had. And you can see from Barcelona in this league season, you can see that she's receiving mostly the wing in the outer corridor and mostly on the offensive half of the pitch. She has some in the box as well.
Yeah, and we talked about it before we started this show that it has been looking like when you have seen her play that she is very wide out by the sideline, and you can see that that's actually the truth looking at this.
And one thing that if we go back to like why she have these high values is that a lot of these receptions, like these are received in very attractive areas, and also a lot of these passes are received from like line breaking passes. So it's like when she receives the ball, it's a lot of free space and she can move on and progress. And in the Champions League, she has a lot of reception in the golden zone, or a lot. She has plenty. When you compare to the national team, it was only 5 games, but you can see she has 2 receptions here inside the penalty area. Otherwise, they are more outside the box in the outer corridor, and she is then making more of the creative actions with her passes and carries. So she's more involved in creating the chances than running the routes and receiving the chance, like the chance creating actions or the chance creating passes. Okay, now we have a PlaymakerTV premiere, I think.
Yes, definitely. You have never showed this before.
No.
I mean, and now my dog is drinking water right beside me, and I think that must, if someone hears that, that's her.
Yeah. We let her drink.
Yeah, she's very thirsty. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, so we have 3 pass networks here, and if you follow me on Twitter, you might have seen the Swedish Allsvenskan for men. I put up a page with all the 16 teams. So, and this is a visualization we will probably use more as well in the future. But it's kind of interesting to see like how she's positioned on average when the team plays. So you can have a pass network for a game, but this is like an average estimated pass networks for all the games. So the most common pass network, or so to say.
Yeah.
And one thing to also note here is that the color of the circle represents the players, and the color of the circle, the more dark it is, the higher the expected threat value the player contributes with, both with passes and with carries. And you can see here from Barcelona in the league season that the players are compared with the other players in the league, and all of these players are like completely black or like very dark. And that's because Barcelona is the team that generates the most expected threat in, at least last year, all of the top 5 leagues, or top 7, or in the women's leagues.
Yeah, they had a good season last season.
They had.
Say. Yeah. Just wanted to point that in.
Yeah. And they're having a very good season this year as well. But this is this season, I have to say. And they won all the 9 games, so having a terrific season again. And then the arrows here are like the passes in between the players, and the thickness is like how frequent this pass is occurring, and the color is also like how much of expected threat the pass is generating on average in the link. So like on average, how much expected threat is this pass generating? And then we have the Champions League here as well. And I think I mentioned all of the descriptions. So where the players at is the average position in possession. That was hard to say. So if we start with the national team, we can see that they're having like a defensive back here, and then Fridolina Rolfö is like more like she has coverage here behind her, and she's more in a offensive position. You can see that she's receiving a lot of chances, but she's also very creative, especially in like you can see that she's very dark here, and she's like generating a lot of threat through carries, for example, and also passes to her teammates here. And when it comes to Barcelona this season, you can see here that she's very offensive. On average, she has a very high position for being playing like both winger and fullback. She has a very high position. And if you look at the other players, it's kind of like that if they lose ball, there's no one behind her really to cover. But she also like the most offensive player here on this wing in general. And then you can see that she has these very strong connections here with Caldente. You can't see the text here, but I can tell you with Caldente. And if you watch Barcelona, you maybe can guess. With Caldente, Guicharo, and you can see Kara Walsh here being kind of a spider in the web.
Yeah.
And Graham Hansen here having a more offensive position, like receiving a lot of passes, but also generating a lot of expected threat. And I thought I would add some of these information of the other players just because it's very interesting, because I think that you have Kara Walsh here this season, but last season, this is Guicharo. So it's like Walsh has taken over Guicharo's position, and now Guicharo is like a little bit higher on average. And you have here also in Champions League, you have Putellas being like, she's receiving a lot of passes and balls, and she was the highest rated player from this grade in Champions League also last year. But she's not playing this year so far.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch that network come, because it's kind of interesting that you say that it's Patri that she is connecting a lot with there, and also that Kara Walsh is the number 6. That means that Patri is playing a little bit higher up the pitch. Also very noticeable if you watch Barcelona this season.
Yeah, and that's like Caldente. If you compare position, Caldente has like kind of not really, but because she's not receiving as many passes Putellas, but has a similar position, or if you compare. And then also like last year or this year, you have Geise Ferreira here, like more in an offensive forward position, but in Champions League they're not. If you look at other teams, you would see more that they have like most teams have like a central player that's the most offensive, but Barcelona is not really having this central forward on average, or like they're more having Putellas dropping, and Graham Hansen and Rolfö was the like highest offensive position players on average.
Yeah, I'm just going to say it again. It's going to be very interesting to watch that pass network from this season in the Champions League when it's done. We will make sure to get back to that once the tournament is over.
For sure. And one thing that I can add, if someone is just wondering, like, why is there not any arrows between these players, is that connections that are like less than 5 per game, 5 passes per game, are not displayed in this. So that's why some arrows are missing. So if you would take a look at some team that Barcelona is facing, for example, there wouldn't maybe be that many arrows because they are not having that many passes when they face Barcelona, because they are owning the ball all the time.
Yeah. Now we get into my favorite, because this is playmakers' profiles in different positions. And we are not gonna go through them all this episode. We are gonna take a look at Fridolina's profiles as a left winger. Also, we are gonna concentrate on the red colors, obviously. So we are
Yeah,
gonna talk about the star, the classic winger, the deep threat, and the creator,
yeah.
because this is
Except
where we can find the Fridolina Rolfö the most.
yes. So a short briefing to the player roles, because that's something that I've been working a lot with this year, and that is something that we will have closely in the platform also, like when we plan to release future platform and other things to come from Playmaker. This is something that we use frequently, because like when you scout players, obviously like a position can be many different things, and it can be kind of flat, like it's not much information to tell that some player is a left winger or some player is a central midfielder. So there's so many different player types, and of course there's an unlimited number of how many player types you can use. Like, I mean, almost every player is their own player role or player type, but we
Yeah.
have these 20 player roles that we kind of use, and that we decided to use and that we think describe players well. And also we have these spider just to kind of see the spread on like how good they are matching other player roles, and that could mean that they're used in some kind of hybrid role in between different roles, but it could also be like an indication on how well the player would fit into another role in another system, or like that you can move the player and they will probably work pretty well there as well, considering how they are performing.
Yeah, and these are also very different. Like Sweden, Barcelona, you can see different things here when you look
Yeah,
at the red color.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And so I don't know. I think maybe I will remove the black one in the future, but you don't need to look at the average really. The red is Fridolina, and the black is like really just telling us like what the spread of roles are in the Euros. You can see that there were the most defensive-minded fullbacks or wingbacks. If you that's really what it says. So you don't need to look at the average that much. You can look at the red values or the red shape that is Fridolina. So if we look at the Euros first, the Swedish national team, we can see that she matches very well with the classic winger, and that's really because that she did a lot of crosses. She is out wide a lot, and the classic winger could be a winger in a 4-3-3 system. It could also be a wing back, and it's not that position bound. Just that as it says winger, it's a player that plays wide. It shouldn't be a central midfielder, or it is not a central
Yeah.
midfielder or a striker. But that's really
I'm most curious about what the star is in this.
yeah.
How would you describe the star? The star Fridolina Rolfö.
Yeah, the star, I would say, I was gonna say that it's the first player that came into mind. I don't know why, and maybe if you're watching Damasvenska, you know. But the star could be a player like Evelyn Viens, for example, that is playing as a winger, usually more offensive. It could be a forward as well, but it typically could be a winger in a 4-3-3 system, and it's usually a winger that also contributes with a high expected goals value and also score a lot of goals for them. And besides that, they are good in dribbles and carries. So it's kind of a star winger when it comes to contributing towards goals.
Yeah, that's gonna be my favorite from now on. Just so you know.
Yeah.
the more of a star a player is,
Yeah.
that's my yeah.
And I think from what we've spoken about, it's not that like you can understand why she's matching the second with the creator, because I told you that she's not receiving balls like behind lines and offensively as much, but she's creating and generating more chances in Sweden, or she has that role. So she is like carrying the ball, dribbling, finding a pass into the box, and being important in like making the difference in possession and creating those chances with her carries and dribbles. And that's just why she matches a lot with the creator. So creator is like a wide playmaker, or it could be also a player playing in like a central attacking midfield role, but is allowed to move a lot freely into both sides of the pitch. So it could have, like, if you watch the formation in your football app or whatever, it could be placed as a number 10 in a 4-2-3-1 system, but then have a very free role to like go out to both sides and being very creative in the outer corridors.
Yeah, and then we have the most difference on this picture, I think, and that's the deep threat, because here she is very red in Barcelona
Yeah.
and not so much in Sweden. So what's
Yeah.
the deep threat?
And the difference in deep threat is the expected threat received that we've been talking about mostly. So the deep threat is a player that is threatening with deeper routes and so on, but also it could also be like through carries and dribbles. But usually the deep threat is either not coming to chances and shooting as much as the star, because but it could also be that the player doesn't have that role necessarily that to be taking the finishes. But the similarity between the star and the deep threat is that they usually are very good in running routes and receiving ball in behind lines and so on. And you can see that both through the pitch plot, but also through the spider, that the expected threat received value was much higher in Barcelona compared to Sweden. So we can also say that this spider is from for the role is from the Champions League. I didn't do all three here, but so this is the Champions League last year, and this is the national team.
Yeah.
And these player roles, they match pretty well, I would say, already after 2-3 games. But the more games you have, the better the match, obviously.
We will get back to this one as well, obviously, when the Champions League is done this season.
And look at the other roles when we take a look at another player.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to move on, I thought we would look at some swarm plots. And swarm plots are these one-dimensional plots where you have one KPI or one statistic value, and you can view the players with the other players in that competition. In these plots, we have the Swedish national teams in the Euros compared to the Champions League this year. Last year, sorry. And we have all the wingers here. So players that are playing wing backs or wingers as more of an offensive winger. And you can see here that one difference is that when it comes to expected threat, as I talked about, and here is like both carries and passes, she had 0.17 or something in the Champions League according to our model, and 0.33. So we talked about her matching better with the creator, and we have looked at the passes, and you can see here as well that so the expected threat per 90 was higher for Sweden than for Barcelona in the Champions League last year. And if we take that further, because like you have to take the expected threat into account, like how much is the teams generating in total, and then if we look at expected threat share, which is like if you look at her expected threat values, and then you take a look at the other players or all the expected threat that the team has generated in tournament, like what part of it was Fridolina's. And if you look at the national team, she stood for almost 1/6 of the total, so like 0.16 expected threat share. 16% of the total expected threat was Fridolina's, so that was pretty much from Sweden. And that means like, how can you imagine like what is expected threat share? So you can really say that from the chances or the actions you do that make a difference in possession, when you're allowed to do these passes into the box, line breaking passes, when you dribble your opponent to come into more empty free space, that generates a lot of expected threat. And of all these actions, that makes a difference in possession and puts your team in a better position to score later in the possession chain. Of all those actions, how big of a part was Fridolina's? And
and this is also this is an interesting plot, because just because she is further behind on the plot or deeper down the plot in the Champions League with Barcelona last season, and higher up for Sweden in the national team, this is just telling us that she is a more important player for the Swedish national team as a whole. Because in Barcelona, she has many good players around her, and she has that in Sweden as well. It's not to mix up with that, but she is an important player for Sweden's chances and creation of chances in Sweden, obviously.
Yeah, and definitely. And So like when Frida plays, she's playing a big part in Sweden. It could be like part of the system that Barcelona play, how they play with the possession, that they are not like maybe they have a lot of good players that they maybe are dependent on, but they also have a system that is very trustworthy and good, so that they're very intact. Either if they miss a player, they can continue in the same way, and that's also part of this number, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, 0.04, so 4% of the expected threat generated for Barcelona in Champions League, and 16% for Sweden in the Euros.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah, and one thing that she had the most at in or performed the best in the Euros was challenges 1 per 90 PADJ, and that's possession adjusted, as I talked about before. So if you adjust for possession, and this is also a good thing that it's different leagues, it's different opponents, so you maybe can't compare it like exactly with each other, but when you adjust for possession, it's easier to compare. So you're not as affected of which team you're playing for. So you're just looking at the time when you're actually wanting to win the ball back, when you're not owing it. And Fridolina was very good in the Euros. She was the top performer in that statistic. And when it comes to the Champions League, you can see that it was only 2 players that were ahead of her. And I don't remember now which players they were and how much they played, but she played a lot. Maybe one of these players just played 300 minutes, so it would be interesting to dig back to. But like, you can just say that when it comes to winning her duels and doing that when the team pressures, or like when you need to recover the ball, she's a top player. I wouldn't say that there are many wingers in the world that are as good as her, considering that these are 2 of the top tournaments in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
So one interesting metric to go back to when we summarize Champions League this year, and also when we look at the World Cup after next summer.
Yeah.
We can also look at the pass share. This is pretty similar. You can see that we saw that she generated a bit more expected threat, or that she had a bigger part of it. When it comes to passes, she also has a bit of a bigger part to it, but the numbers are, she almost has the double of the share for the passes in Sweden compared to Barcelona. They're more spread out. And when we look at the shots, you can also see a huge difference from like her having less than 6% of the shots in Barcelona in Champions League, but in Sweden from her offensive role, she has 12%, and you could see that she also shot a lot from the distance in Sweden. Like, she had several shots outside the box, but in Barcelona she doesn't have that, and that can also be directives from the coach. Like, Barcelona maybe are not, you know this more, Mia, but like Barcelona maybe are not focusing on taking shots outside the box as much as Sweden do. Sweden maybe have, like, when they come close to the penalty area, they're more allowed, or sorry. To shoot than in Barcelona, when they want to keep the ball a bit longer and enter the box first.
Yeah, I think so, because of the fact that obviously this season, when Fridolina has scored for Barcelona, it has been closer to the goal. But I do think in Sweden you need to use that weapon that she actually is, obviously, because she can shoot. But you said something before we started to record this about this, because obviously,
I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. So yeah, because I have to say that, like, there was some criticism in the Euros, like, or there were talks about Fridolina just because she was our big star, and she was conceded scored the 1 goal. And one thing that she could, like, add to her playing style, or like, she performed, we saw earlier that she performed slightly over her expected goals, so that is good. Like, she performed well, but if you're more matching to the star player role, you're like scoring goals above your expected goals, and in like a higher, if you have a higher difference, and you're also like generating more chances when it actually comes to finding that shooting opportunity, and generating a higher expected goal, and that's one thing that is where Frida is maybe behind other wingers, and that she can develop.
Yeah, obviously, and I'm pretty sure she was aware of that in the Euros too. And but the problem is also, but no, not the problem, but the interesting part is this, that maybe this graph is what Swedish fans and media saw, but then you have to take all other factors into consideration when looking at the whole picture to give her a fair
Yeah,
a fair say, I would say also.
definitely. And I also think just because she was our biggest star, there are like a lot of expectations on her, and I think it's maybe easier to view like how many goals or look at the easy classic statistics than look at the numbers behind it. And when we
Yeah.
summarize Fridolina, I know that she was just outside the Playmaker 11 when we took out the Playmaker 11 for the tournament, and we put together the total machine learning grade that we have on all players. She was just outside the 11 to make
Yeah.
it. That was just because like her numbers in general were so good, and we saw that like she generated. When we look at the expected threat per 90 from all wingers in the tournament, there was only 4 players that was above her, and
Not bad players either,
no,
we
all
must
these
say.
players on the list
No.
are top players. And then also like when we saw that she was the best when it comes to challenges and like defensive play, so she was very close to 11, and she did a great tournament. And I thought almost that it felt like she didn't get the credit that she deserved.
No, I'm with you on that. You know that, and this is why it's interesting to watch. Obviously,
Yeah, and that was about it. That was the player report, and
yeah.
I think that I hope you liked it. We will do some more player reports in Playmaker TV and take a look at other players. And I said to you, Mia, that it might be a shorter episode this time, but I think we almost came up in an hour still.
Yeah, I mean it's like obviously we have 18 minutes to go to kick off, so it's good. It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
It's very good. But if you have wishes about players you want Jesper to scout and that we can talk about in another episode, just let us know either on Twitter or comment on YouTube. We will be happy to do it. Hope you will enjoy tonight's games in the Champions League. You too, Jesper, obviously.
Yeah.
And until next time, as one usually says, we will be back in 2 weeks and do another episode. So once again, if you have any wishes for a player you want Jesper to check out more closely and that you want us to talk about, just let us know. You will find us at Twitter, and Jesper, you have at Jesper Hagloof. That was very Swedish, I would say. But you will find me at Mia_Eriksson.
Yeah, it's the exact same that you find here on the screen. Our names.
Exactly. Good.
So it's very good in that way. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and recommend it to other people you think might enjoy it. And yeah, follow us on Twitter for more content and interaction. So yeah, have a good night and enjoy the Champions League.
Bye.
Bye.